Submerged UFOs, what we call USOs, mysterious and not fully explained phenomena in the oceans. This is, of course, a U.S. Navy image. And even in 2014, with the Navy drills off San Diego, there were witnesses that said that these UFOs were very easily plunging into the water or just stopping flat above the surface of the water. And when they were submerged in the water, they would again go very fast underwater. Very mysterious goings on. So what's going on? When asked who lives on the ocean floor, people answer differently. Kids and some adults will say SpongeBob, SquarePants. Lovecraft fans will mutter something like Chulhu Dagon and a twinkle with their eye. Divers and oceanologists will look thoughtfully at the questioner, and if they are lucky, will tell a lot of interesting things about Quakers, Bioduck, Bloop, and even Poseidon, anomalous phenomena of the underwater world. The depths of the sea have always been a mysterious and frightening environment for humans, and we can't really go that far down. Not even the submersible scientific submarines. Perhaps there are no more impressive and persistent legends than those associated with various places in the oceans. Take the notorious Bermuda Triangle or the Flying Dutchman. At first glance, serviceable ships that were abandoned by the crew. Many of them received a reasonable explanation, and some still remain mysteries, even if supported by a lot of evidence. By analogy with UFOs, or as they are now officially called, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, marine anomalies are often called USOs, unidentified submerged objects, that is. And these phenomena can be divided into two classes based on the way they are detected, visual and acoustic. It's logical to note that most of the observations of sound anomalies occur in the second half of the 20th century, when submarines and methods of tracking them became widespread, whereas descriptions of the first class of USOs have been found since ancient times. And we can start with them now. Buddha wheels and devilish carousels. The ability of many marine life to produce bioluminescence has long been known. Some species of plankton emit light enough to be seen by the human eye. Most cases of observation of any glow on or directly below the surface of the water are associated with this phenomenon. Well, this is from the point of view of science. And if we turn to bikes, stories, and mysterious circles on the water, they're popular. Let's not right away that despite the prevalence of these stories, not a single documentary evidence of such phenomena exists. They were called Wheels of Buddha or devilish carousels. There is a version that the first name was given to the luminous circles on the water by Eastern navigators and the second by European navigators. Moreover, the Chinese considered the meeting with these phenomena a favorable sign, while the Christians took them for a bad omen. It's difficult to find authoritative confirmation of these stories except for the transmission on Channel 1. So let's move on to the next point. Krakens and submarine sharks. By the 1970s, sane people were convinced that horror stories about giant sea monsters were nothing more than the fruit of the inflamed fantasy of sailors of the past. What could they only think of after 6 months of eating corned beef, which they have to wash down with water that was bloomed in barrels? But no, sometimes the legends turn out to be true. In the spring of 1978, the USS Stein DE-1065, the USS Stein DE-1065 was attacked by a giant squid while patrolling the Pacific coast of South America. The target of a deep-sea giant that unexpectedly approached the surface was the protective casing of the nasal sonar. The alarm was sounded by acoustics, whose work was unceremoniously interrupted by a strong abnormal noise. Inspection of the bulb at the forward end of the ship's keel, where the instrument was located, puzzled the sailors. Almost 10% of the rubber-like coating was badly damaged. In cuts and scratches, they found pieces of chitin, similar in composition to the tissues of a squid sucker. The problem was that, judging by the size of these suckers, the length of the mollusk should have reached, according to some estimates, 45 meters. That's about 150 feet. That is almost 3 times more than the theoretically calculated maximum length of the giant deep-sea squid. History is silent as to whether anyone's hearing was hurt by hitting a sensitive underwater sound receiver. But this incident is not the only example of an attack of marine fauna on the U.S. Navy. Around the same years, American submarines acquired active sonars station AN-BQR-19 from Raytheon, expensive and complex equipment, the outer elements of which are covered with neoprene. It suddenly turned out that on this material, almost in every trip, round holes with a depth of 1 or 2 millimeters began to appear for some odd reason. Open sources do not indicate what worried the military most of all: damage to the appearance or some kind of malfunction caused by these caverns. According to some reports, the deepest wounds led to leaks of special sound-conducting oil, which literally blinded the submarine. In any case, the problem was closely studied by both the command of the fleet and the manufacturer of the hydroacoustic stations. The engineers argued that no animal could leave such damage, and the military reached the point where they began to suspect the secret development of Soviet colleagues. They say the communists have come up with a new weapon against nuclear submarines, and the naval biologists solved the riddle. They remembered that in tropical waters you can find an extremely unpleasant fish, the Brazilian glowing shark. For the specific structure of the jaws, in English, they came up with the telling name cookie cutter shark. The first word means device that cuts the dough for cookies, and even in circles. This rather distinguished looking creature has a length of about half a meter, that's about 1.5 feet, hunts in packs, and attacks anything that it considers to be food. And it does not matter if it's a whale or a submarine. With their incredibly sharp teeth, Brazilian glowing sharks pull a large piece of flesh from their prey and swim back to the depth of more than 3 kilometers. So that's pretty deep down. Their belly also emits a pale green light. After the neoprene parts of the nuclear submarine were covered with fiberglass, which fish cannot bite through, the damage to the equipment came to naught. Fun fact, 10 years later, history repeats itself. Apparently the Navy forgot about the curious incident with sharks and did not cover the new rubberized outer parts of the submarines with solid materials. Nature was not long in coming. The fish again inflicted considerable financial damage on the U.S. Navy. The Chulhu Awakening. The mention of Lovecraft in the first paragraph is no coincidence. The writer in his works indicated a fairly accurate location of the underwater city of Real, and this is the abode of gigantic monster, the great ancient lord of the worlds, Chulhu. Under normal conditions, he sleeps, but if he awakes, he will destroy the entire human civilization. How does all this relate to reality, though? It seems to be nothing, but in 1997, an incredibly powerful infrasonic signal was recorded. It proceeded from approximately the same area of the Pacific Ocean where, according to Lovecraft's description, Chulhu is hiding. The piquancy of the situation is added by the general character of the sound, which is very similar to the noises emitted by a living creature. However, if these gurgles or bloops, in the official name of the USO, were produced by an animal, it must be several times larger than a blue whale. Many theories have been put forward. The combination of factors that enhance the natural infrasound and the noise of a large concentration of marine life and the grinding of ice on the ocean floor were assumed. In 2012, scientists agreed that the most likely cause of such a sound was a cracking, especially large iceberg. And other results of the work of SOSIS, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, after the Cold War, had access to powerful tools, SOSUS, S-O-S-U-S, an acronym hiding the sophisticated American submarine tracking and tracing system, and after the collapse of the USSR, there was no need to conduct continuous monitoring of the now not Soviet but Russian nuclear submarines. Some SOSUS nodes were mothballed, and the secrecy was somewhat lowered. As a result, civilian scientists gained access to high-precision hydroacoustic instruments. And since the early 1990s, the number of sound anomalies found in the ocean has begun to grow. Among them, both in conditionally established reasons, the bloop, and still unexplained. By the way, by a strong coincidence, all unusual sounds that received an explanation were attributed to especially large icebergs. But there are real mysteries as well. For example, the off, the upswitch, upsweep, and whistle. The first anomaly was first recorded in August 1991 and has been observed every spring and fall ever since. The sound source is located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and may be associated with volcanic activity, or it may be not volcanic activity. It seems that it will not be possible to establish for sure. Every year it's quieter, and the whistle in turn was heard only once and with only one hydrophone and 1,500 kilometers from the coast of Mexico. Its peculiarity is an unusual spectrogram and a high frequency for infrasound. Then we have the Quakers and biodips. If the reader gets the impression that only the American recorded the sea UFOs, the USOs that is, then they are mistaken. The Soviet sailors also had their own adventures associated with these sound anomalies. The most documented communist USOs are called Quakers. In the mid-1970s, the crews of Russian nuclear-powered submarines faced an alarming acoustic phenomenon. Most often it was found in the area of NATO anti-submarine lines in the North Atlantic. The acoustics of Soviet submarines recorded unusual sounds, similar to the croaking of frogs. The sources of these low-frequency vibrations almost always accompanied the submarine and moved at incredible speeds of 150 knots, according to some reports. The problem was that active sonar did not show any metal or plastic objects in the place where the sounds appeared. Either the Quakers were alive or too small to be found. Until the late 1980s, attempts were made to establish the nature of these sounds. Assumptions were different. Someone suspected previously unknown phenomena occurring in a nuclear reactor. After all, diesel-electric submarines have not heard anything like that. And according to another version, the sources of croaking could be especially oscillatory processes at the boundary of water layers of different temperature and salinity. For a long time of observation, sailors and scientists have sorted out all possible hypotheses, almost from attempts to contact an alien mind with humanity to an unknown weapon of capitalist aggressors. And in the end, the USSR Academy of Sciences insisted that the sounds are of biological nature. Either they are some kind of whales or unknown species of deep-sea mollusks mistaking the submarine for prey, or maybe even large concentrations of sea crustaceans, sounds like that. The divers, in turn, argued that this was all nonsense and that the Quakers did not at all look like marine fauna. Mysterious objects tried to find bearing, plotting the places of their detection on the maps and comparing the accumulated data of different crews after the campaigns, but no intelligible explanation has appeared. There is the most realistic version, expressed by many skeptics. For croaking, Soviet sailors took the sound of active buoys being dropped from anti-submarine aircraft. These hydroacoustic radios have water-filled batteries and are hypothetically capable of producing similar sounds. This theory explains why Quakers are most often observed in areas of active NATO patrols, and why they stopped hearing them in the 1990s after the collapse of the USSR. Russian nuclear submarines no longer needed to be monitored so closely, and the rapid movement of the source of the mysterious sound can be simply an effect of the sequential activity of several buoys in a row. But Soviet submariners were not the only ones who heard croaking in the depths of the sea. Similar sounds were recorded by sailors of the Royal Navy of Britain. True, they christened them differently. They called them bioducks. Moreover, the British submariners would not have succeeded in attributing the anomaly to someone else's anti-submarine equipment. The waters around Australia were of interest only to the British. The fact is that this southern continent served as the main nuclear test site for Her Majesty's Army, Navy and Air Force. And this is on Solask. I'll leave links below for you for this. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.